folks, again, Friday Daily Dub, and we're going to talk about TV and movies today. So, question both from Jeff Casey and from Yoda around my TV and movie viewing. So, kind of both, like, what are my favorite things on TV and movies, but then also, like, what are some of my favorite things that involve consequences or changes to characters over time. I've talked about that previously, that's my preferred method of storytelling, and so there were some questions around that. So let's kind of go through what my favorite things are. So I guess if I ranked my 5 favorite TV shows, that would be kind of a challenge. I know that Lost is by far, it's my number 1, it's my favorite television show of all time. I love Lost. I love the character development, the story, the emotions that are tied to it. I understand that everybody didn't get the things they thought were important answered. That's part of any story, right? Like, there's just certain things that are never going to get answered. But that is by far my favorite television show. It's not my favorite property, but it's my favorite television show because it really doesn't exist in other areas yet. Sopranos is definitely in my top 5. Then it gets kind of hard. Breaking Bad is in my top 5. Those 3 are definitely in the top 5. But then you have shows like The X-Files, which was a very formative show for me, kind of in my late childhood, early teenage years. Even though that show kind of declined as it went on and on and on, some of my favorite episodes of television ever are in The X-Files. Friday Night Lights is another show that I love. Again, it's in the similar vein as Lost in that it's lots of character development, lots of story, lots of emotion, and those are the kind of things that resonate with me. So, I mean, those are definitely in the mix. Then you've got things like Game of Thrones and Walking Dead, 2 television shows that I love. I love Game of Thrones. I'm sure it's in the top 5. It may even be number 2. But because they exist in books, they exist in comics, they exist in figures and collectibles, those are more properties that aren't just honed in on a television show the way some of these others are. So they kind of exist in a different realm to me, if that makes sense. I would say Game of Thrones is probably in the top 5. Walking Dead is probably not in terms of television shows. Then you've got other shows like I love Boardwalk Empire, The Wire, things like that have been very good. I love Mr. Robot. I like the show Homeland that's on right now, even though it's near the end. I like the show Billions very much that's on right now. So these kind of serialized, ongoing stories are the things I like. Now, network television usually doesn't exist in this plane for me. And X-Files is an exception to that, but X-Files had it too. You basically knew Mulder or Scully were never going to die, even though there'd be story arcs for other people to die. But, it's kind of my challenge with network television. But there are things like The Goldbergs, where there are changing things where the kids are growing up and going to college, and there is a more thread that's running through it. It's just not always talked about. So I do recognize that exists in other places, but it's more in the serialized TV, especially the premium TV. I like the Netflix Marvel shows okay. I don't love those. There are certain themes, like I love Bernthal's The Punisher, and so his arcs in Daredevil and then his shows are great. I love Jessica Jones. But then there's other parts that are really not as good for me. So it can also be done not as well. When you get into movies, that is way, way harder. Because movies just exist across this vast landscape of things. And the things that make a movie good to me, are not necessarily what makes a movie fun or enjoyable always. Right? So like Infinity War is a great movie in terms of incredible visuals. It's a resonating story. We've been so familiar with these characters for 10 years, but it's not like a classical good movie in terms of the plot. It's a very simple kind of heist plot. It's a very simple plot. You knew that Thanos was going to go get all the stones. You knew he was going to get them. Like, you knew that was going to happen. There was no surprise there. You knew people were going to die along the way. Who died and who didn't, and the snap of the fingers and all of that. Like, sure, you could have been surprised by that, but it's not that hard to figure out. You knew that that's where it was headed. I think the main thing that I didn't like of Infinity War is very predictable. It was a very predictable movie, especially if you knew the comics. So Marvel stuff exists over here. I love it to death. Want to watch all of it. I'll go see all of it on opening weekend. I get great fun out of it, great pleasure, but it is not incredible storytelling like some other things that you get. Like, for instance, the first Sixth Sense movie that just wowed everybody and had this major surprise and all of that stuff. Or the movies, like I thought, the Rami Malek portrayal of Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody is an uncanny acting. There's nothing in a Marvel movie that approaches that, right? It's just different things. They're different categories. So to say what my favorite movies are is really hard. It depends on my mood. Do I want to be intellectually stimulated and challenged and emotional with a movie? I'm probably not going to go superhero. That's not it. Do I just want to sit back and watch some Explodo and see some cool stuff and be with some of my favorite characters to read about? Well, that's going to be a superhero, right? So I don't even know that I could list off the top of my head. I don't have notes on this. You know, my phone's over here. I'm not using it. I don't, but see, TV, I'm pretty focused. But movies, and honestly, I don't watch as many movies. My time is much more on serialized television, ongoing. So it's like reading a book, right? It's that kind of thing. Where movies are 2 hours and I'm done and I'm leaving and I don't got to come back to you. If I had to pick some of my favorite movies ever, my favorite Marvel movie is still Ragnarok. That's easy, hands down. I really liked the first Now You See Me, the Magician movie. I thought that movie was very good. I'm trying to think of recent things that are from the pop culture landscape that I've enjoyed a lot. I really liked Inception, obviously. That's right up my alley. I really like the first Matrix. You know, so things in that world. So I like it when something smart and intellectual crosses over into the world of sci-fi or pop culture or something in that versus, you know, just kind of straight telling of a story. Like the movie Lincoln that Daniel Day-Lewis was in. I think that was him. It's a wonderful movie, a wonderful performance, but it's not in sci-fi at all. So I can appreciate the performance. I like the movie, but it doesn't scratch some other itches. I know that's kind of rambling, confusing. Anyway, I hope that answered the questions, and we can talk more about this if you like. Anyway, have a great Friday. Enjoy the weekend. I'll talk to you tomorrow. New Dub Life on Sunday in Ohio. I think you're going to enjoy that episode. If you haven't watched the trailer, go watch it. And I'll talk to you next time. Give us a look with the pinky now. It's hard to do it, but with the pinky you can give a, oh, squeeze!